shift our attention to Angola. Sub-Saharan Africa's second biggest crude oil exporter has now marked a major gas discovery. Angola has confirmed a significant offshore gas discovery off the country's coast. Preliminary estimates suggest that the field may hold more than 1 trillion cubic feet of gas and up to 100 million barrels of associated condensate. Angola has recently been identified as a rising hub in Africa energy transition.
Imagine a country once treated like a backyard gas station, suddenly standing up and saying enough. Imagine Angola, Africa, as second largest oil producer, looking the United States straight in the eye and rejecting a billion-dollar proposal that Washington thought was already in their pocket. For decades, American oil companies walked into Africa with confidence, sometimes even arrogance, believing every deal, every contract, every refinery upgrade would be theirs. But not this time. Because this time, Angola did something America did not expect. They put their foot down, they protected their sovereignty, and they said the 4 words Washington hates to hear: we choose our own. In one powerful move, Angola shut down a U.S. oil agreement worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and instead handed the opportunity to local Angolan refiners, local workers, and local industry. And this decision shocked Washington. Why? Because for the first time in a long time, Angola is not just exporting crude. It's exporting a message. Africa is no longer for sale. Today's story is not just about oil, it's about pride, it's about conflict. It's about a nation fighting to control its own wealth, and it's about the rising era of African independence, one bold decision at a time. Let's go deeper. Angola has shocked the world before, but what happened this time has sent a political wave from Luanda to Washington, from African oil markets to the halls of the U.S. State Department. What began as a routine negotiation between American oil executives and Angolan officials suddenly exploded into one of the most symbolic moments of Africa's rising independence. The United States believed it had the contract locked in. It was a major proposal, a technical partnership, refinery expansion rights, and long-term access. 2 million barrels of Angolan crude. For American energy companies, this was supposed to be one of the easiest deals of the year. After all, U.S. oil giants have operated in Angola for decades, feeding the American refining system and strengthening Washington's strategic energy supply. Angola has always been seen as a reliable partner, predictable, cooperative, and dependent on Western technology. But that belief was shattered the moment Angola made a historic announcement. The U.S. oil proposal had been rejected, and the opportunity would instead be given to Angolan-owned refiners, local investors, and African regional partners. When the news broke, oil markets paused. Washington felt blindsided. Analysts began asking the same question: what changed? Why would Angola risk upsetting the most powerful nation on earth? And more importantly, what does this say about Africa's future? To understand how this decision became so explosive, we have to go back to the roots of Angola's identity, a nation shaped by struggle, driven by pride, and determined to control its own destiny. For decades, Angola exported crude oil but imported refined fuel, diesel, petrol, jet fuel, aviation kerosene. Despite being one of Africa's top oil producers, it relied heavily on foreign countries for finished petroleum products. This was not only expensive, it was humiliating. Generations of Angolans have asked, how can a nation rich in oil still depend on others for fuel? Local experts have warned for years that foreign dominance in Angola's energy sector was deeper than money. It was structural. The technology was foreign. The refineries were foreign-owned. The pipelines were foreign-managed. Even market prices were heavily influenced by global players who profited more than the local population ever did. So when the U.S. presented its new oil proposal, it wasn't just a business offer. To Washington, it was another strategic foothold. To Angola, it felt like history repeating itself. The deal promised investment, modernization, and jobs. But the fine print raised eyebrows. American companies would control key refinery decisions for decades. Technological rights would be owned by the U.S., the majority of long-term profits would leave Angola, and the contract would effectively tie Angola's future energy development to U.S. oversight. Inside Angola's Ministry of Mineral Resources and Petroleum, debates grew intense. Younger economists argued that the proposal could help Angola scale quickly and safely. Older energy veterans saw something different, a familiar pattern that kept Africa dependent on the West. The turning point came during a private meeting when a senior Angolan official reportedly asked a simple but powerful question. If we continue accepting deals like this, when will Angola ever control its own oil? That sentence changed everything. The government took a bold step, one that few African nations have dared to take in the face of U.S. pressure. Angola began reviewing alternative options, and what they found was incredible. Local companies now had the capacity, the technology, and the workforce to take on the challenge themselves. Over the last decade, Angola has been quietly building the foundation for a new kind of energy independence. Local engineers trained abroad were returning home. New refinery projects were emerging in partnership with African and Asian investors. Angolan private sector leaders were stepping up. In short, the country realized something crucial: they didn't need the United States. When Angola announced that the U.S. proposal had been officially rejected, Washington reacted swiftly. Diplomats requested clarification. Lobbyists put pressure. Analysts warned that Angola might be making a geopolitical mistake. But the message from Luanda was firm: Angola's resources belong to Angolans first. The reaction across Africa was immediate. From Lagos to Nairobi, from Pretoria to Accra, young Africans celebrated the news. Social media exploded with messages praising Angola's courage. For many, it wasn't just about oil, it was about dignity. It was about seeing an African nation choose itself over a superpower. Inside Angola, the mood was electrifying. Local refiners, once overshadowed by Western giants, suddenly found themselves at the center of national pride. For the first time, local companies were being trusted with a contract of this scale. It was more than business. It was a declaration of sovereignty. But what made the story truly emotional was the reaction of ordinary Angolans. For years, citizens have dealt with fuel shortages, long queues at petrol stations, and rising energy prices, all in an oil-rich nation. They have watched foreign companies take billions from Angolan soil, while many families struggled to afford basic goods. The decision to empower local refiners sent a message of hope, a message that Angola was finally fighting for its people. Economists say this move could completely reshape Angola's economy. By strengthening local refining, Angola reduces reliance on expensive fuel imports. It creates jobs, it keeps profits inside the country. It boosts national technology development, and it strengthens Africa's growing movement of economic self-reliance. Washington, however, sees this differently. The U.S. views Africa not only as a resource-rich partner but as a geopolitical battlefield. China has been expanding its footprint across the continent. Russia has been forming new alliances. The European Union continues to secure mineral and energy rights. And now, with Angola rejecting a major U.S. proposal, analysts warn that America may be losing influence in yet another strategic African nation. But Angola isn't choosing China. It isn't choosing Russia. It isn't choosing Europe. Angola is choosing Angola. This is what makes the decision so powerful and so symbolic. It's not a pivot from one superpower to another. It's a pivot to itself. It is a declaration that Angola will no longer act like a junior partner in its own oil industry. Behind closed doors, U.S. officials reportedly expressed shock and even frustration. They expected Angola to accept the deal, especially given America's long-standing presence in the Angolan energy market. But this time Angola did not bend, it did not compromise, it did not negotiate out of fear. Instead, it stood firm and it stood proud. Many believe this decision will inspire a wave of similar actions across Africa. Countries rich in oil, minerals, and gas may begin demanding better terms, renegotiating old contracts, or rejecting foreign proposals altogether. This isn't anti-American sentiment, it's pro-African awakening. Local economists say the symbolism is more important than the money. Angola has shown that African nations can say no loudly, clearly, and confidently. They can prioritize local industries. They can protect national wealth. They can resist external pressure and still emerge stronger. In the eyes of many Africans, oil has always been the curse that brought foreign intervention, exploitation, and inequality. But today, oil has become a symbol of liberation, a tool of empowerment instead of oppression. Ask Angolan youth what this decision means, and they'll tell you the same thing. It's about time. Ask African analysts, and they'll say, this was long overdue. Ask U.S. officials, and they'll say, this changes everything. But ask the Angolan government, and they will tell you exactly what the world needs to hear. Angola is rising on its own terms, and that single message delivered through a rejected U.S. oil proposal is reshaping the future of Africa's most resource-rich region. The world is changing, Africa is rising, and Angola has just taken a bold step into a new era, an era where African nations choose pride over pressure, sovereignty over dependency, and their people over foreign interests. This is not the end of the story. In many ways, it's the beginning. In the end, this moment is bigger than Angola, bigger than oil, bigger than any contract the United States could ever offer. What happened here is something generations of Africans have prayed for, dreamed of, and waited to witness. A nation standing tall, unafraid, choosing dignity over dependency. As the dust settles and as the headlines fade, what remains is the feeling deep inside the hearts of millions, a feeling that something has shifted, something powerful, something irreversible. The world watched Angola reject a proposal from one of the most influential nations on earth, but Africa watched something completely different. Africa watched one of its own rise. And that rise did not come from military power. It did not come from foreign backing. It did not come from a billionaire investor or a global institution. It came from a simple truth, the truth that Angola finally believed in itself. For decades, Africa has been told that it cannot walk alone, that it needs Western supervision, that it needs foreign companies to manage its resources, that local engineers are not ready, that local investors cannot compete, that African nations must always settle for less because that is the safe option. But Angola shattered that narrative with a single decision, and if you listen closely, behind that decision is the sound of a continent waking up. It is the sound of young Africans saying, "We are not weak, we are not helpless, we are enough." It is the sound of elders who survived colonialism whispering, "This is the future we prayed for." It is the sound of a new generation refusing to be owned by anyone, not by America, not by Europe, not by China, only by their own people. This outro is not about politics, it's about pride. It's about the invisible emotion that lives inside every African heart, the desire to see our nations rise, to see our resources benefit our children, to see our countries define their own destinies. When Angola chose local refiners, it wasn't just a business move. It was a declaration that African hands are capable, that African companies can lead, that African innovation is real, powerful, and unstoppable. It was a reminder that the wealth of this continent should not flow outward forever. It should flow inward. It should build schools, roads, hospitals, tech industries, and opportunities for the millions who have been waiting for change. And for the young people watching this, wondering whether their country will ever make a decision like this, remember this moment. Remember that it only takes one nation to spark a continent. Ghana once sparked independence movements across Africa. Rwanda sparked a digital revolution. Kenya sparked mobile banking. And now Angola has sparked something just as important: resource sovereignty. One country stood up, and now others are asking themselves, why not us? Why shouldn't Nigeria keep more of its oil wealth? Why shouldn't Zambia own its copper? Why shouldn't Namibia control its lithium? Why shouldn't South Africa strengthen its local industries first? Why shouldn't every nation in Africa choose itself before choosing any superpower? This is the beginning of a new chapter, not just for Angola, but for Africa. A chapter where contracts are read more carefully, where leaders negotiate with courage, where foreign pressure is met with calm confidence, where African nations stop apologizing for defending their own interests. But the most emotional part of this story isn't geopolitics, it's the faces of the people. It's the mother in Luanda who dreams of a future where fuel prices finally stabilize. It's the young engineer who wants to work in an Angolan-owned refinery, not in a foreign-owned one. It's the student who wants to study petroleum engineering because for the first time they feel like their country actually needs them. It's the small business owner who wants a stable economy built on local value, not foreign extraction. It's the countless citizens who want to live in a nation that stands tall, not a nation that bows. As this story closes, one truth becomes clear. Angola did not reject the United States. Angola chose itself, and sometimes choosing yourself is the most powerful act of independence. So let this moment echo across borders. Let it be felt in every African capital. Let it remind every young African watching this video that courage is contagious, sovereignty is possible, and the future is no longer written by outsiders, it is written by us. Angola has taken the first step, the world is watching, Africa is awakening, and the story is only just beginning.